in the classroom. If you are watching, please join in this conversation and say hello, make comments in the chat. Let me know that you are there. Today, I am joined by three wonderful educators who are going to be talking about how we can increase creativity in the classroom. So we hope that we can share ideas with you. And I'm going to invite our first educator, Ruth, to explain what's your role and how would you define creativity?
Okay, so hi, my name is Ruth, and I'm a teacher trainer on the TMTE project, British Council. I think that creativity is about students producing and using their own ideas and accepting maybe different responses or unusual ideas. So not one fixed idea, lots of difference.
So different ideas, a range of ideas in the classroom. Thank you very much, Ruth. And you're specializing in training primary school teachers. Let's move on to talk to Nahid. Tell us a little about yourself and how do you think of creativity in your classroom?
Thank you, Wendy, and good evening to our audience. And I'm Nahid, and I've been working as a teacher trainer at National Academy for Educational Management. And about creativity, in short, we can say the use of the imagination or original ideas, especially when making something new. And the two things is very important. I mean, the use of imagination and original idea that will help us to make something new.
I think imagination is absolutely key. And yeah, something new, something original, and creativity is really closely linked. So thank you very much for joining us. And hello to everybody who's out there watching. Today, we're talking about how we can increase creativity in the classroom. And I'm going to move to our last guest, Reza. Please tell us about yourself and yeah, what's creativity for you?
Thank you, Wendy. Hello, everyone. Good evening. This is Untitled Chapter, and I'm a lecturer at Rajshahi Cadet College. Creativity to me is the ability of the students to transcend the ordinary. I mean, when students can transcend from the ordinary ideas, ordinary imaginations, and can think out of the box, actually. That's what I understand from the term creativity in short. Thank you very much.
Nice. So you're looking for ways that students can think outside of the box, come up with original ideas, thinking about imagination. And as Ruth was saying, not giving that one answer, but accepting a range of different ideas that leads to original and creative thought. So hi there to everyone that's joined in. Thank you very much for saying hello in the chat. We are going to move on to our first question, which is, why is creativity important in teaching and learning? What is your opinion? Why do we want students to even be creative? Nahid, do you have any thoughts on why it's important for students to be creative in the classroom? Why should we encourage this as educators?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there are some specific reasons why students should develop their creativity. One of the reasons is that, creativity has been considered as one of the most important 21st century skills nowadays. At the same time, as many of we know that this is very much required in the academia and also in our real life and also in our working environment. So students need creativity to use it in their academic life, in their real life, as well as their working environment in the future. And also, this is, if we consider the Bloom taxonomy, this is considered as higher thinking order skill. This is at the top of the higher thinking order skills. So these are the main reasons why we try to develop student creativity in the classroom, I think.
Nice. So we're talking about the relevance of creativity for academic, for professional life. What about your opinion on this question, Reza? Why is it important to have creativity in the classroom? Why are we educating our students in this way? What does it bring to the class? And if you have any thoughts, people watching at home, it would be great to get some of your ideas too. Pop your ideas in the chat and we'll post them up. So, why is it important to be creative? Why do we want to educate our children in creativity? What are your thoughts, Reza?
Okay, maybe the first thing is you see that 21st century life is full of problems. I mean, we have problems everywhere, right? I mean, in our profession, in our society, everywhere there is problem. The world is full of problems, and critical creativity uh, influences the critical thinking ability of the students, and it helps them to solve different kinds of problems by allowing different kind of ideas, by working with different kind of ideas they have. And with those ideas, if they work on with those ideas, they can solve lots of problems they face in their professional life or even in their real life. So I think that one of the reasons why creativity in classroom should be practiced is to make the students able to solve different kinds of problems.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really nice idea and connects really well with what Nahid was saying about creativity is about academic life and it's about work life. And when you're faced with a problem or a challenge or something that's difficult, being able to think about it in a different way that you haven't been taught where there's one single answer to this, but different ways to approach that problem can be really empowering for learners. I'm going to move on to the next question. And if you have any ideas about creativity in the classroom and how we can increase it, please post them in the chat. But specifically, my next question, I'm going to start with Ruth. What do you think are barriers to creativity and trying to teach learners in creative ways and for learners to actually be creative? What are the barriers? What are the difficulties for teachers and learners?
I think one of the barriers is how we approach correct answers and correction in general, and praise as well. If we're constantly correcting students, telling them that they're making mistakes and not accepting possible alternate answers, and students exploring different ways of expressing themselves, then we're not going to let them be creative. Also, when it comes to praise, there's a lot of research around behavior-based praise. So instead of saying to a student, yes, you've got everything right, 100%, well done, instead you praise them for their hard work. This encourages the student to work harder in future and be more creative in future, which research shows actually leads to more successful adults. So I think it's all about praise and correction.
Okay, and that's sensitive error correction. I'm just going to pull up a comment here. Thank you, Mahfajur Rahman. A really good point about being up to date and staying, continue to learn so you can solve unwanted problems. So finding other ways to approach problems, I think that's really true and really connects with what a lot of Reza, Ruth, and Nahid were saying. Going back to the barriers to creativity, do you have any further thoughts on that? Ruth is saying about praise and behavior-based praise, and also talking about how we deal with or how we perceive and think about correct answers. What would you add to that, Nahid?
I'd like to add some points, and I really agree with what Ruth mentioned. In addition, I'd like to say, I mean, exam-centered teaching is one of the big challenges for us to improve their creative thoughts or their creativity. So often, I mean, the teacher often focus more on exam-centered activities. This is one of the reason, and another reason, sometimes in some classes, traditional way of teaching is noticed. So where students are not asked to give their opinion, and rather we impose the thought on them. and and also another reason could be, another barrier could be accept diversity. uh, this is not very much common in some culture. uh, so it could be a barrier. We need, as a teacher, we need to accept different answer from the students. So these are the barrier, I think.
I think that's really interesting about the idea of diversity and having those range of ideas. So really coming back to that point around sometimes there are correct answers, but sometimes and often there are many possibilities for the way that we can perceive a problem, the way that we can interpret situation, and then allowing our students to really be creative and have ideas that aren't necessarily one single answer, but many different answers. And that second point you made about having opinions, giving students the chance to have an idea, to have original thought, to actually enter into a dialogue, to actually give the space so that they can really debate and discuss their ideas with each other and not just accept one single view. Some really important points there, Nahid. Thank you. Reza, would you like to add on to this? Any barriers that you experience to creativity? And I'd like to say how to Gautam, who's just managed to get in and join us. I will pass to Reza, and then Gautam, we will come back to you in one moment. But glad you could make it.
At first, the thing that I want to say is what Knight sir has just said is really true, that exam-centered education allows students to have less scope to innovate and to do what they are actually thinking on something. As we are always focused on especially formative assessment, summative assessment, I should say, and the scope for their innovation is less. So in solution to this, what we can do is we can start formative assessment, which the government is already doing, and we can also introduce project-based learning, which I think will give the students enough opportunity to show their innovative works.
Absolutely. I think one of the really important parts in class is the task stage, where often you come towards that project area and then you're able to be more free in how you express yourself. You're given a broad idea of what you need to achieve, but like you say, it's not so focused around the exam. And it's really exciting to hear about the developments and the changes in education. I'm quickly gonna jump to Gautam and invite you to just introduce yourself very briefly. And then we will move on to the next question, which is about parents and community. What advice could you pass on to parents and community in order to support students and how they develop in terms of their creative abilities? So over to you, Gautam. Oh, hi. Gautam.
I am Gautam Majumdar. I work as yes. Oh, sorry.
It's good.
Can you hear me now?
It's working now. There was a slight delay. It's all good.
Okay. I'm Gautam Majumdar as a head teacher in government primary school, and I'm TMT graduate for first cohort from Dhaka PTI. Thank you.
Fantastic. And can you tell us, Gautam, what kind of parental support, what can be done within the community to help students develop those creative skills, which, as we said earlier, can really be beneficial to learners in their academic careers, in their professional life, and their personal development as well? Any advice that you would pass on to parents or to members of the community?
Thank you. One thing I can tell here that if we agree with just I can mention his name. I can't remember that. If we give our students to chance to think about what they are doing, and if we can make our parents understand that we need to create some environment so that students can learn the basics, and then they focus their attention, they focus the one thing that what they are doing. I think it will create an environment so that the students can learn more profoundly, and they can go ahead with their knowledge, and it will create an opportunity to express themselves. So we
Nice.
should discuss with the parents about our community and stakeholders, so that we need to move forward. We need to go out of box, so that we can arrange themselves. We can make them understand what is our need, and what we have to do for the future children. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Gautam. So if any of the viewers watching, if you are parents and you have children, I'm curious to know, how do you perceive creativity when teachers are working with students and not focusing on an exam, but doing more creative approaches when there isn't one single answer? What are your opinions of that? I'm going to move to Nahid to talk about, how do you work within your community to promote understanding around creative approaches and creative teaching?
Yeah, if you ask something about the community, we have some roles to play, and at first we need to understand the importance of creativity, and also developing the creativity among our students or among the community young people. So, as a member of community, sometimes we can establish some literacy club or some other cultural part where students can their practice creativity, and also we can arrange some competition as well in the club, uh, and 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 also this is very important uh, to just accept the thought as a community member. Sometimes we really find hard to accept a different thought. So if we practice it in our real life, and we also accept different thoughts which is not similar to us, we can encourage our young people and also the other community members to develop their creativity.
Nice,
Thank
thank you. And I'm gonna pass to Ruth, because Ruth, where are you from, and what was your experience of growing up, and how did you experience creativity as a student, as a young person, and how is it influencing the way that you approach teacher training and your experiences now?
Okay, so I'm from the UK. I'm from the southwest of England. And I have a creative background, actually. I've played music since I was very young, since I was 4 years old. And my first degree is in music. So I have a very strong creative background, I think. In terms of that helping me with teaching, I think it gives me the confidence as a teacher and as a trainer to really listen to my students and listen to their ideas, listen to their answers, and know that there's not one fixed way of looking at things.
And I think that's so important when we think about creative activities that traditionally, like drama, music, and art. In some way, that requires you to have the courage to go out there and present yourself. And I suppose when we're in the classroom, if we are going to accept that our students can give us different answers, as teachers, we need to be able to adapt, to respond, to change, and to listen in a way that if there's one correct answer, we don't. If there's only one correct answer, as a teacher, you can say correct or incorrect. But if we're going to accept that we want this variety and diversity, this can be something where we need to use our creative skills. I'm just noticing some wonderful comments coming through. So thank you, Hassan Arif. So teachers should give motivation about creativity in the classrooms, and the necessary materials should be accessible to them to foster creativity. Would anyone like to comment on that? Like in terms of what would you perceive as necessary materials? Like what is important in being creative? Any of the panel would like to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, here I'd like to add the beauty of developing creativity is that you do not need any material to develop a student creativity. But yeah, if you use some prompts or some teaching aids, it might help. For example, we can use some sticky notes, or also we can use poster, and also we can use some other visual prompts to develop. But I want to say that here, I mean, even in low or no resource classroom, the teacher can develop student creativity. This is the best thing I consider.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice point, because sometimes you feel that you need to have all of the resources. You need a drama department with lots of costumes. But also, like you say, Nahid, it can just be how you approach your teaching with prompts. So
I can give an example.
go ahead, please, Gautam.
Okay. In my class, when we are going to teach the grammar, as we know that we don't have any direct grammar in our primary education. So when we want to teach the grammar, that is, I on the board, or usually I use posters. I just draw a monster. I can give an example. I learned it from a TNT training. Just I draw my monster, and it has two heads, 4 legs, 4 hands, 1 eye. Then I tell my students to draw their monster. Then students think it, and they try to draw their monster by the imagination. They can
Nice.
only use the posters or paper, nothing else. And by their imagination, they draw it. So, and like this, we can increase the creativity. And like a simple resource, we can use it. We can create.
I think that's a really good example. And it really talks to what Asok Badra is saying here about students being pressurized to do an activity which they aren't interested in. This example, Gautam, where you're talking about primary school learners creating their own monsters with 3 heads or 4 heads, 6 legs or 1 leg, where there's no correct answer, but they are playing with an idea that is appropriate for their age group, that children enjoy stories. Like I remember when I was young, I enjoyed the concept of monsters. So I think that's a really nice example and a really good point that Asok brings in too. I'm going to continue to move on to talk about how do you promote creativity in your classroom. But one thing we're saying here from Chowdhury, monster is not a good idea for kids. And I think you're also making a very good point. You need to know your learners, and if they are going to be sensitive to the idea of a monster, if creating a monster is scary for them, then absolutely step back and think about perhaps they're going to draw an animal that doesn't exist. Like unicorns are really, really popular with children where I am from now. So my nieces and nephews imagine different animals. So thinking about what kind of learners you have and how you can make the creative approach fit their needs, so that, as Asok says, they're not being pressured to learn something which they're not interested in. So going back to the next question, how do you promote creativity in your classroom? I'm going to pass this to Reza. How do you promote creativity in your classroom? What kind of things do you do?
First of all, whenever I'm teaching a new topic to my learners or to my students, first I invite ideas from them. I mean, I try to elicit information that what they know already about the topic or what they think about the topic. So I appreciate their thinking. Their thinking sometimes deviates what conventionally we think, and they come with perspectives that's beyond even sometimes my imagination. But I appreciate their idea. Yeah, even if I think that it's rubbish, but still I appreciate their idea. That okay, it's a good idea because they have come up with an idea, and listening to their idea, appreciating their idea, I think boosts their confidence to think more, and they engage themselves more in thinking, and they try to create. So that's how I think that I do promote creativity in my classroom. Simply, if I just say it in a word, I just appreciate and invite information from the students, and I appreciate their ideas, and I encourage them to think more, to create more. That's what I do.
That's fantastic. So I think really critically there is you're saying you're giving students the chance to bring what they already know to the class. Okay. And there's a point here that Mafajur is making about first students need a basic knowledge. And if that knowledge is less, then the value of creativity will not be as high, in his opinion. And I think it's a good argument you're making, but the approach that Reza is talking about is rather than us perceiving ourselves as the teacher with everything and all the knowledge in our heads, speaking to our students and allowing them to say what they already know or understand. Going back to the original discussion, there are things that are correct and things that are incorrect, for sure. But how we arrive at learning those things can be different. And then there is also the potential for diversity and range of thought. So certainly within the language classroom, creativity has a lot of possibility. There's lots of chance to bring in creativity to our students' learning. And I also think at home, when children are playing, this is also a great space where we can give students confidence. Critically, one of the things that Reza was saying, he appreciates his students' ideas. And that appreciation is so significant. Going back to the idea of praising children for effort, for ideas, and not for one single correct answer. setting up a problem so that there are different ways to deal with it. Okay, going back to the question, how do you promote creativity in your classroom? Nahid, please tell us on that.
Thank you. I mean, I also, as a language educator, I think that creativity and English language teaching go in hand, hand in hand, and when they practice creativity, they can practice creativity while improving their English language. And, in English class, this often important to experiment with the language they learn. For example, if they learn a new grammar, they need to use it. When they use the new grammar, they are practicing creativity. When they use making a sentence, yeah, using the given vocabulary, they are practicing creativity. And also, students are required in language class to try out the language. When they say something from their own, they are practicing creativity. And at last, I want to say that learning a new language is inherently creative process. Whatever language you learn, as a second language or a foreign language. Okay, as you are learning, you are also practicing the new language. Sorry, you are practicing the creativity.
Yeah, and I think this again connects with a point that's coming through in the chat where Asok is saying you need to have theoretical knowledge and give students practical examples. And the way that we can pass this theoretical knowledge and check that students understand that theoretical knowledge is by using creative tasks where we can see students putting it into action. And then as teachers, we can reflect, have we effectively given students the theoretical knowledge of a grammar point or of a vocabulary point so that they are able to use it effectively? So thanks very much. And thank you for all the comments that are coming through. Some really nice ideas, which are nice to include in this debate. So creating creative classrooms and promoting creativity. Are there any other comments that anyone would like to make at this stage? Ruth, please.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to respond to some of the comments. There are people saying that they think in the Bangladeshi education system or the syllabus is not updated, and that students are pressurized. My experience before I came to Bangladesh, I was a teacher trainer in Paris, in France, and before that, I was in Africa. I've worked all over the world, and this is a common problem. I don't think it's specific to Bangladesh. In my experience, it's teachers who don't feel confident giving students the reins, handing over to students. It's all about a well-structured class, which provides, as somebody said, the foundation for that final stage of the lesson where students are able to express themselves and where you can accept alternate answers or alternate ideas. So I don't think it's specific to Bangladesh.
I think a really good point there for sure. Okay, we're going to move on to our final question of the evening. And I would like to know some concrete examples. So if there are teachers watching or even parents, people studying English, that supporting their children studying English, what examples or ideas have you got that people can take into their classrooms tomorrow? Let's go back to Ruth to start.
Okay, I'd like to steal some ideas from some of the teachers that I've been training. I've seen some really wonderfully creative classes recently. For example, I saw one teacher who was teaching a grammar lesson. She was teaching I would like and I want. And her idea around the context for this class to help students to remember the target language was it was a class about a genie. So she made a lamp, and the students rubbed the lamp and they'd say what they would like to the genie. It was really nice, really memorable. Another example, last week I saw an excellent lesson with class 3. This is a government school. There were about 50 children in quite a small classroom. And the teachers were teaching punctuation. It was a writing lesson. So the students were learning how to use capital letters and full stops. The teachers had a really strong context. They had a story. I think it was Mitu and Mina. Sorry for my pronunciation. It was about a parrot and a girl. And the kids loved this story. As the class developed, the teachers taught the children about when to correctly use capital letters and full stops. And at the end of the lesson, they had class 3 students with very limited literacy and English writing their own stories. And there were some really wonderful stories. They were talking about cakes and cats and cats and rats chasing each other. All the stories were different, and all 50 children in the class were very engaged in this creative writing activity. It wasn't obvious maybe to them what the learning outcome was. The learning outcome was punctuation, but the teachers taught it in such a creative way that I don't think the children will ever forget how to use capital letters and full stops. It was a really great lesson.
Some really nice examples there. So I love the idea of bringing like a genie into the classroom. The idea of magic and fantasy is really, really effective and moves away from what Asok is saying here about teachers lecturing the whole class, using imagination to teach primary school children and secondary, I imagine, is a really powerful way to get them engaged and actually to take the pressure off you as a teacher at the board and put it over to the students so you enter into a dialogue. I'm going to move on to put this to Reza. Can you come up with any examples, concrete examples of what you're doing in your classroom to promote creativity?
Okay. Once I was teaching water pollution to my 9th grade students. So what I planned the lesson is I took the students outside the classroom. I took them to the nearby pond, different ponds. There are 3 ponds inside my institution. I took them to those 3 ponds, and all the students collected water sample from the ponds. They came back to the classes. They preserved the water. Then they moved on to the chemistry lab. They checked which sample of water out of these 3 ponds has got more pollutant. And then they graded the water. That okay, this is grade 1 water, which means it is less polluted. This is grade 2. This is grade 3. And I seek help. From my chemistry teacher, who is also my colleague, in imparting the lesson. So that's one of the things that I have done in my classroom to teach water pollution. Then again, whenever I'm teaching a dialogue, I often invite students to role play. I mean, students take characters and they start reading out the conversation. Even I give them the liberty to add any sentence they like with the given conversation. So there are ways to promote creativity. You just need to spend some time on your lesson, before going to the classroom. Thank you.
I think that's a really good point. Well-planned lessons, like you are saying. And it sounds like working across departments is a great way to share ideas and creativity. I think your lesson example of checking the different water points for the pollution could also fit nicely with I. Chowdhury's approach to teaching science. And I know in many schools, teachers are setting up clubs and book clubs so that children have space to explore and play, not just in the lessons themselves, but also outside of the lessons. And sometimes as teachers, it can feel more comfortable to start experimenting and being creative as teachers outside of your class, and then moving that approach into your classroom, because it does take courage to be creative as a teacher. Nahid, can you give us a concrete example of how you teach creatively?
Yeah, before I answer the question, I'd like to say we often have some myth. I often deal with different teachers who are working in the secondary schools. They sometimes have some myth. They think that if I want to develop creativity in the classroom, I need to change the book. So this is not true. Within the textbook, you can improve their creativity. At the same time, sometimes they think that I need to bring a dramatic change in my teaching practice. This is also not right, because within the existing practice that you often do in the classroom, you can improve their creativity. You need to twist some of the activity, or there are some activities that you often do in the classroom, but you don't know these will improve students' creativity. For example, open-ended question. So this is a nice way. It means that a question doesn't have single answer. So we often, as a teacher, do that. So when we give them any open-ended question, student can practice creativity because it doesn't have single answer. Student need to use their imagination to use it. At the same time, we often do brainstorming in the classroom because, as you know, it also activates their background knowledge and also their schemata. So if you just use this brainstorming technique in the class, where student will generate some new idea to solve a problem or to answer a question, it can also improve their creativity. And also the practice that I often found very effective to develop the student creativity. That means I often do with my student the alternative way to end a story. For example, there is a traditional story. It has it has a one way to end the story. Then I often ask my student, what are the different way you can end this story? And also, I often just use some completing sentence. For example, if I were king, I dot 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 dot. So they come up with different answers. In this way, we can use creativity. And in one of my with one of my classes, I use classroom wall magazine, where I invite the student to come up with their creative writing. For example, their story, their poem, or some other some essay or their reflection. So this is a nice way. And
Yeah.
also, often I do what, I use this picture in the classroom and I tell them, okay, now describe the picture. This is the easiest way, and this is the common practice that we often do to just get some different opinion, and of course it improves student creativity. And
Yeah, that's great.
yeah, yeah.
So there's so many ideas that are coming through there, from the way that we present as teachers to the class, and also the way that we set up tasks. I think one of the things that is always good to keep in mind, if you're not confident in creating a magical and lesson full of play, you can always do more traditional drawings, stories, and you can ask your students to bring the creativity into the classroom. We have unfortunately come to the end of this evening's webinar. So I would like to thank all of the panel and the Daily Star for organizing this event. It's been great to have you part of this discussion. And thank you to everyone for your comments and for tuning in. I can see some people are asking in the audience, can we join? Please, we would love to have everybody join this conversation. And the best way we can do that is to keep up having these events and for people to join through the chat and through the comments. So thank you very much once again to the panel for joining me this evening. It's been a real pleasure to hear your ideas. And if I were king, I would encourage all teachers to take a leap and be creative themselves in the way that they teach. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.